Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Moskowitz-Sweet, an NCJW board member, and we're so thrilled to welcome you today to our NCJ Webinars Leadership Series. This series is dedicated to creating an online space to connect, to learn together, and to provide leadership training and skills. We are so excited to learn today with Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg and all of you, our NCJW leaders from across the country. In the next hour, you'll have the opportunity to network and meet new NCJW leaders, learn practices to avoid burnout, which is so critical, as we just mentioned in our little chat at the beginning, and gain inspiration that will help sustain us in our social justice pursuits. I just have a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please, as Samantha has mentioned, please share your name, section, and pronouns in your Zoom name and introduce yourself in the chat as well. Everyone's mics will be muted to prevent background noise, and you're welcome to unmute during the group discussions, and we'll let you know when to do so. To enable closed captioning, click on the CC or closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to write down any questions you might have or drop them in the chat box, and we'll try to answer what we can as we go along. Write in the chat if you're experiencing any technical issues, but please note that our limited capacity to address those issues when the webinar is running. And we are recording this webinar and we'll upload it to our website to share with those who cannot attend in person and for your reference should you need it. We would also like to share a few community norms that are going to guide us today. These norms will be part of our shared practices, our leadership webinars going forward. First, take risks. Try new ideas and practices as part of your discussion. Be willing to listen as much as you lead. Assume positive intent and take responsibility for the impact of your words and actions. Trust each other and check assumptions. Stay on point and be mindful of time. And with that, it is my pleasure to briefly introduce our speaker, Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg. Rabbi Ruttenberg started as NCJW's Scholar in Residence in September of 2020. She was named by Newsweek as one of the 10 rabbis to watch, and by Forward as one of the top 50 most influential women rabbis. She is a prolific writer and will share the 7 books that she has written in the chat. She was ordained from the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies in 2008, has served as a rabbi and educator at Tufts and Northwestern Universities, Hillel International, the Dialogue Project Ask Big Questions, and Avodah. She lives in Evanston, Illinois, with her spouse and 3 children, ages 11, 8, and 5, who sounds like my children are currently climbing the walls after these many months sheltering in place. Please join me in welcoming Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg to lead us today. Thank you.
Hi. Happy midday, whether it's morning or afternoon where you are. It's wonderful to be here. I'm going to apologize in advance if there are screams in the background as my kids are navigating their day. So we are going to talk about sustaining ourselves and avoiding burnout today. So I'd like to invite us to start in the chat by sharing what you do to keep yourself going, keep those batteries full, how you avoid burnout, what you do to keep your energy full and able to go. Whatever works. Is there's your practice, caffeine, yes, God bless, exercise, meditation, yoga, taking a break from the news, right? Knowing when to unplug is really important. Sometimes externals can fill us up and sometimes they can deplete us. Dog walks, right? Listening to music, being with kids can fill us up or deplete us depending on the moment. Starbucks breathing exercise, deep breathing, poetry, writing, knowing that what we're doing makes a real difference. I was on a call with the Biden administration earlier today. This work is making change and it's really important. cooking, Zoom calls, right? Crocheting, talking, right? Zooming. Great. Okay, I'd like to now invite us to do a little bit of a little exercise. Close your eyes, if you would be so game. Take a deep breath. Take another deep breath. Feel your body sitting down. Feel the weight holding you. And I'd like to invite you to picture a moment that felt joyful. Just picture a time when you experienced joy. What was happening? Where were you? How did it feel in your body? Just capture that experience of joy and hold it for a moment. Great. And when you're ready, come back. Love to have a couple folks share in the chat what came to mind. Games with my dog. Other folks, what came up?
My family visiting.
Let's keep the chat. It'll be, I want to hear everybody's voices, and it's going to be really hard to sitting on the beach, being thankful, time with grandkids, wedding in the park with family and friends, laughing, right? Just let that fill you. I'm going to look at a few texts around joy, and then we're going to go into breakout groups and talk about our experiences of joy. So let's pop to the first text. Great. So this is in the Torah, in Deuteronomy. There are a couple of places where God is commanding us to have, to hold holidays. And there are a couple right in a row that are very similar, but I just pulled out the one from Shavuot, which is the holiday marking the receiving of Torah at Sinai, 7 weeks after Passover. And this is what it says. And you should keep the festival of weeks of Shavuot for your God with a tribute of a free will offering of your hand, which you should give according as God has blessed you. And you should rejoice before God, you and your kids and your people who work for you and the Levite who is inside your gates and the stranger and the orphan and the widow who are among you in the place where God will choose to place God's name. What do you notice here? What does this text tell us about joy? Let's keep using the chat so that we can get as many voices in as possible. Share joy, right? We have to be with people. What kind of people? Being in community. Joy is in the giving, right? That it's not the rejoicing is not in sitting around and receiving, but in opening up our gates, bringing in the whole community, right? And FaceTime, right? So, and not just, is it just our family? No, it's like the whole extended community. And it's the people, and this is a text that's speaking to someone who has a certain amount of privilege, of course, but they are saying to the person with privilege, it's not just you and your family and like your other friends who are also, you know, landowners, but rather your workers, right? People who are in position of power. And the Levite who is inside your gates. So the Levite is not able to own land. They have a specific role in the temple. And so people who do not have the same capacities that you do. And not only that, but also the stranger, right? Basically we would call them the non-citizen, the immigrant, and the orphan, and the widow who are among you, right? The people who have what role in society? Right? They're the most vulnerable, right? That this is that joy, first of all, we don't see it as a noun here, do we? What is joy? Joy is, it's a verb, right? It's something that we don't just have, it's something we do. Like there's an active piece of this. And as we are rejoicing, as we are doing joy, the doing joy is, as somebody noted in the chat, is an active process, right? It's you give to all of the people in the community, right? Make sure that no one is left alone in times of joy. That if you're trying to rejoice and there are people who are hungry, you're not doing joy right, right? If you're trying to rejoice and there are people who are vulnerable because they don't have the same language access that you do or community connections that you do because they're immigrants, right? Rejoicing isn't going to work, right? If there are people who are uniquely vulnerable because of their gender, right? The widow or their orphan, their family situation, right? This is intersectionality. Then joy doesn't work. Joy is as much of a social justice issue as everything else. Yes? You with me? Okay. Let's move to the next slide. Here's another perspective on joy. So there's a holiday coming up next week, which is in the chat, Purim. There we go. And we say, so Rosh Chodesh Adar, the beginning of the month of Adar was this past weekend. We say the one who comes into the month of Adar increases in joy. Misha nichnas Adar marbim simcha. Right, that you get more joy just by being in this month, because Purim is a time of joy. Why is Purim a time of joy? It seems like there's a delay on the chat. I don't know if I would really encourage people to try to participate. This is another time where they tried to kill us. It didn't work. Let's eat, right? So, and this text, I think, teaches us something about this. Right, so we have this moment, Haman, the bad guy, has got this edict that the Jews are going to die, but then Esther, in her bravery, speaks up and uses her privilege and helps overturn it. And then the king lets the Jews defend themselves. And so we see the rest of the Jews, like those in the king's provinces, mustered and they fought for their lives. They disposed of their enemy, but they didn't actually take the enemy's stuff. And that was on the 13th of the month of Adar, and then they rested. And then on the 14th day, it was a day of feasting and merrymaking, right? Eat, drink, and be merry. So then there's this whole business about village Jews live in unwalled towns, observe on the 14th day, and Jews in the walled towns do on the 15th day. And it's a day of merrymaking and feasting, right? A holiday for sending gifts to one another. So Mordechai, who's one of the protagonists in this story, he records the events. He sends dispatches to all the Jews throughout the provinces. And he says the 14th and 15th every year should be the days that we are transformed from one of grief and mourning to one of festive joy, right? This happened this one time. So every year we are going to observe them as days of feasting and merrymaking and as an occasion for sending gifts to one another and presents to the poor. So how do we observe joy in Purim? Anybody know what the 4 critical mitzvot, commandments are of Purim? Mishloach manot, right? Sending our friends these gift baskets, defined in Jewish law as giving 2 people 2 edible, different kinds of food. So if you send somebody a biscotti and a beer, or biscotti and a coffee, you're good on mishloach manot, or habantashen and an orange or whatever, tzedakah, right? Matanot levyonim. So you give gifts to the poor. You have to give money directly to people who are in need today on Purim. The feast, right, is number 3, right? Is that everybody coming together and having a feast and then reading the Megillah, or hearing the Megillah, right? Those are the 4 things. How we do joy is we come together and feast, for sure. And we share delightful treats with our friends, right? And we tell the story of that time we got saved, and we make sure that people don't go hungry, right? This is, again, how we joy and how we merry make is by remembering that if somebody's hungry, we're not doing it right. Yes? Questions, thoughts on one or both of these texts? Comments? Okay. Should we look at one more text before I put you in groups to talk about this? So this is by Cleaver Cruz, who created something called the Black Joy Project. When we acknowledge that we exist in an anti-Black world that is set up to ensure that we do not live, to choose life and to choose to enjoy any aspect of that life is a radical act. Amplifying Black joy is not about dismissing or creating an alternative Black narrative that ignores the realities of our collective pain. Rather, it is about holding the pain and injustices we experience as Black folks around the world in tension with the joy we experience in pain's midst. It's about using that joy as an entry into understanding the oppressive forces we navigate through as a means to imagine and create a world free of them. Anybody want to, using the chat, how would you summarize in a phrase or a sentence, what is Black joy, according to Cleaver? What do you think? Radical acceptance of reality and opposition to it, right? It's not about denying what is in terms of oppression, in terms of pain, hard things, looking for the rainbow in the rain, right? Finding that even when things are not ideal, there is beauty to be found, a radical act of love in the face of oppression, right? Even living in a world where systems are set up that are profoundly unjust and cause great pain and oppression, being able to say, here's love, right? Here is joy. This moment right here is valuable, right? Being both choosing to say now is valuable and of course, the declaration that we must create change. So these are, I wanted to share these three texts because I think they illuminate ways of thinking about joy that are more complex and nuanced than I feel happy, everything's great, right? Everything in my life has fallen perfectly into place and I don't have any problems, right? That is not joy. That is not human life most of the time, right? Most of the time, some problems are addressed, other problems are created, right? There's times of pain and times of struggle, and there's still the opportunity for joy. And when we are able to have joy, we also have obligations, right? When we have privilege, our joy comes with obligation. Even when we ourselves are recovering from oppression, right? Purim is the story of our oppression. Our joy comes with obligations. So I would like to, with that framing, now pop you into small groups to break out and share a time when your work at NCJW has been a source of joy. Right? How does this, and how do those moments of joy inspire you to keep going and keep taking action and sustain your work? And again, hopefully this more nuanced framing of joy can open up some space to be thinking about your work with NCJW in new ways. Yes, good. Thumbs up if why don't we, I would love to hear some high-level takeaways from your conversation. We unfortunately don't have time for a full report back, but using the chat, I think while we're in group, the chat function is going to be our best tool for getting as many voices in there as possible. I'd love to hear, what were any takeaways, any insights, things that seem to really resonate. What struck you? It's great just to have a time to be together and connect. Joy has been the leadership webinars. How lovely. Opportunities for service, even during COVID. The needs certainly haven't stopped, and the ability to be able to be useful hasn't stopped. While trying to continue to help people in need. Great joy from Sheila Katz's energy. Yeah, me too. Touching the live and everyone in DC, touching the lives of our community. COVID hasn't stopped, right? We adapt and we grow and we find new ways, connecting and learning from all of these brilliant women. This organization is amazing. All of you are amazing and inspire me all the time. The opportunity to make a difference, having opportunities to take action and advocate on pressing issues, talking with bright, like-minded women, make an impact. We find strength in the work we do. Right? I mean, we're seeing some patterns here. I'm really feeling acutely what we talked about during these texts, right? That this ability to be of service is a critical piece of the joy, right? Like the Deuteronomy text and the Purim text, right? The ability to be together is a critical part of our joy. Like all of the texts we discussed, being that we can find the joy even in these difficult times. The third text we had talked about, right? Mobilizing younger members, right? That's amazing. It's wonderful. And being able to keep doing this work and be of service now, even now, especially now. So now I want to bring out another piece that, at least speaking personally, I find really helpful fuel when things start to feel a little exhausting, which is vision, right? That when we remember the world we are trying to create, it can fuel us and help us along the path. When we get tired, we can remember where we're trying to get to, and it can keep us going. So I thought a way to start with our thinking about vision would be to look at NCJW's mission statement. The National Council of Jewish Women is a grassroots organization of volunteers and advocates who turn progressive ideals into action. Inspired by Jewish values, NCJW strives for social justice by improving the quality of life for women, children, and families, and by safeguarding individual rights and freedoms. What is the more perfect world that NCJW is trying to create? I'd love to just use the chat. What world, describe the world that NCJW is trying to bring into being. What's there? Equity, no underlying biases. And I would say a world that is equitable also does not have systemic obstacles. Love, peace, and economic justice for all. Of peach, I would love a world with peaches. Also peace, probably. Justice, equality, and joy. That's a wonderful typo. Justice and inclusivity and equality. What is there? Like, even get more concrete. What is there? What isn't, not even what isn't there. What you walk out the door in this world of safety, security, and respect, what do you see? End of bigotry, no food insecurity, shelter for all. What else? What else? You walk down the street in this more perfect world, compassion, gratitude, rights, content, equality, fair hiring and compensation, repro rights for all people who can get pregnant, a public safety focus rather than criminal justice, right? Focus on what keeps us safe, truly integrated communities, equal pay for equal work, right? Maybe tolerance and inclusivity and even celebration, right? Celebrating our differences. An end to food insecurity and homelessness. Other things that you think really would exemplify a world in which social justice and improved quality of life for women, children, and families might help you see. Healthcare for all, right? Where nobody needs to worry about being able to afford taking care of their bodies. You can live, move anywhere because schools, housing, and parks are all available everywhere and equally just, right? There is no, oh, that's not a good place to live because the schools are terrible. Right? That's not a safe place to be. Every place is safe. More women in leadership positions, yes, please. And I would say more women of color in leadership positions, making sure no one gets left behind in job opportunities, childcare, good education, self-respect. Right? A space that is open for everyone. So now as we've had a little time on this, let's go back into the breakout rooms and talk about the vision you would like to see come into being for the world and how working with NCJW helps you to bring that vision into reality. Taking with you, holding. How vision is helping to fuel you and keep you full, motivated and fired up. A couple of notable takeaways in the chat.
Okay. And there you are.
And there we are. There's this delay between people typing and it's showing up. That's always like,
right. Take a deep breath and then just sit there for a while.
I mean, listen, I'm a longtime facilitator. The moment is when you're running a discussion and the room goes quiet, you give people a minute to think. Don't need to afford. They'll get there. People always get there. So working together brings connection and joy. The challenges of working with younger folks. The organization needs to grow and develop. I'm thinking about Zoom. We are working on being a less well-kept secret. How national has made it easier to navigate the pandemic. Yeah, it's a lot, right? So religious tolerance, no assault weapons, please God. Thought, I hope this has been a useful little time to think about how you can keep fueled and what can help keep you going through all of these difficult times in our lives, in our nation's history. The work is ever present, and hopefully vision and joy can help to fuel us together, to work together and each other right? And knowing the impact that we're having can fuel us into the future. And so we thought to end with a poem by a Puerto Rican indigenous Jewish poet named Aurora Levinas Morales. And it is her version of the Via Hafta, the central point of Jewish liturgy. And I find it powerful. So Samantha and Jane are going to read for us.
So I'm just going to start. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on the doorposts, on your doorposts, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders, teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemies, recite them in your sleep. Here in the cruel shadow of empire, another world is possible.
Thus spoke the prophet Roque Dalton. Altogether, they have more death than we, but altogether we have more life than they. There is more bloody death in their hands than we could ever wield, unless we lay down our souls to become them, and then we will lose everything. So instead,
imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is your power. Imagine every detail of winning, the exact smell of the summer streets in which no one has been shot, the muscles you have never unclenched from worry gone soft as newborn skin, the sparkling taste of food when we know that no one on earth is hungry, that the beggars are fed, that the old man under the bridge and the woman wrapping herself in thin sheets in the back seat of a car and the children who suck on stones nest under a flock of roofs that keep multiplying their shelter. Lean with all your being towards that day when the poor of the world shake down a rain of good fortune out of the heavy clouds and justice rolls down like waters.
defend the world in which we win as if it were your child. It is your child. Defend it as if it were your lover. It is your lover. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more.
Imagine rape is unimaginable. Imagine war is a scarcely credible rumor. That the crimes of our age, the grotesque inhumanities of greed, the sheer and astounding shamelessness of it, the vast fortunes made by stealing lives, the horrible normalcy it came to have, is unimaginable to our heirs, the generations of the free.
Don't waver. Don't let despair sink its sharp teeth into the throat with which you sing. Escalate your dreams. Make them burn so fiercely that you can follow them down any dark alleyway of history and not lose your way. Make them burn clear as a starry drinking gourd over the grim fog of exhaustion and keep walking.
Hold hands, share water, keep imagining it, so that we and the children of our children's children may live.
Thank you so much.
Can you send that to us?
We will. We'll send it out.
Beautiful.
It's a great poem. I'd like to hand the mic over to Emily to close us out.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That was beautiful. And I can't believe this hour went by so quickly. So much incredible, rich conversation. I think one of the things that really stuck out to me today was the concept of joy being a verb and something that we actually, take action in doing. And so I invite you all just to share in the chat one new learning or idea that you are going to be walking away with today. So thank you. Please take a moment also. We're going to be sending out a survey that's going to pop up on your screen. If you could complete that about the webinar. Your feedback is really important as we plan future sessions. And if you have any constructive feedback, noted. If you have any constructive feedback, please email Samantha Wheel at sweil@ncjw.org. As we mentioned earlier, the recording of the webinar will be shared over the next few days with everyone who registered. And we will be repeating this webinar again this evening at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, for those who are not able to attend during the day. We hope to see you at upcoming virtual events next Wednesday, February 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. We are going to be hosting a Reclaiming the Purim Narrative, a feminist celebration, for a lively English Megillah reading featuring feminist commentary by NCJW CEO Sheila Katz and Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg. And save the date also for hashtag Roots Revolution Continues, an exploration of reproductive freedom in honor of Justice Ginsburg. On what would have been Justice Ginsburg's 88th birthday, we'll honor her legacy and how we can continue in her footsteps to furthering reproductive freedom and expanding abortion access. Join us also for our next Leadership Series webinar, Making Sense of All Things Finance, with Paula Garrett, NCJW Treasurer, and Patty Rubin, NCJW Assistant Treasurer, to get advice on budgeting, audits, financial reporting, and more. Thank you again for spending this hour with us today, and thank you, Rabbi Ruttenberg, for leading us in this really important conversation. So to all of you, we wish you stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
It's critical to name where we're trying to go, our vision for a better world, and to keep our eye on the prize, because that anger is going to deplete us. Listen, there's a place and time for righteous anger. I'm absolutely here for it. And sometimes we need to say, what is the world we are trying to create? Somebody private messaged me, and so I'm not going to say who, but people want to talk about how to move between the space about worrying about the future and finding joy in the here and now. And it's a tricky balance, right? There's no magical one answer, but there are a few things I want to say. One of the things that resonated with me early in the last administration, saw somebody online said, people were like, oh, you have to pace yourself. It's a marathon. It's not a marathon. It's a relay race, right? We have to know when we're able to take the baton and push towards this more perfect world, right? Push towards this world where we and our children can live. And when we need to say, you know what, I got to tag out for a minute and fill up the well, right? We have our level of ourself, we have our level of our family ecosystem, we have our level of community, and we have the level of being part of the more national conversation. We cannot go full throttle on all of them at all times. So figuring out where we have capacity and where we can in our work for justice be focusing on moving the needle towards this grander vision. And when we need to say, you know what, right now I need to pause and refill my own well with all of the things we discussed at the beginning, right? The snuggling puppies and long walks and writing and reading and making art and listening to music and all of those things, coupled with the spiritual practice, and I really believe it's a spiritual practice of finding joy in our justice work and finding ways that our work for a better world can also fill us up. That in those Zoom meetings, those moments of being able to connect with somebody, those moments of knowing that you're impacting things, you're making things better, that can also fill you up, right? Knowing that you're using your power in ways that are going to help bring us to this more perfect world that we're obligated to bring into being, right? So it's a tension. And sometimes I think focusing on the here and the immediate here and now, when people talk about mindfulness practice, right? That the exact thing that's just in front of us, if we put all of our attention into chopping vegetables, right? Into when we're listening to music, we're listening to music. If you're a parent, you might be doing two things, not one thing, or three things, but like trying to make sure that what you're doing now is what you're doing fully. You're snuggling that puppy, that is your activity right now. And then it gives you clarity about what your next step is, right? If life is not a treasure hunt, you go and you find the next piece of paper that tells you the next place to go. That sometimes when we do the thing we're supposed to be doing, when we do it fully, it gets easier to find the next piece of paper that tells us our next job. And sometimes you're going to find a piece of paper that's going to be like, go have a nap. Like, you need a nap. And sometimes the next piece of paper is going to say, listen, there are people who are hungry. We are in the middle of a massive economic crisis right now. How can you be useful? Right? Or how can you help connect people who are having trouble navigating technology to the vaccine pipeline, right? And help get somebody a vaccine appointment. Right? There's all sorts of ways. The work that we do with NCJW, how we can we take 3 steps towards changing the laws in our nation, right? In our state or in our nation, how we change policy so that we can impact myriad people, right? All of these are pieces of the work, and snuggling the puppy is part of our job, and trying to change laws is part of our job. Because if we never snuggle the puppy, we are going to be no good when it's time to take care of people who are hungry and when it's time to change laws. And if we don't find the joy in doing the justice work, then we're going to be handing off that baton earlier than it's our time. Right? And so being able to find the joy and the meaning and the connection to vision in our work for justice, and knowing when we need to hand off that baton and go have some puppy time, or go put on, just like put on Coltrane, turn off the lights, light a candle, something, and just be in a space where all you're doing is having the experience that you've decided you're allowed to have for the next 45 minutes, right? It's all part of the work, right? And when you take the time to refuel, that makes you more useful. So that's also your job.